Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome U.S. Secretary of Veterans Affairs and U.S. Army veteran, Bob McDonald.
Good morning. Imagine for me, if you're here in Washington, D.C., and you're in a hospital bed, and you're about to die, and someone you love says to you, "Did you accomplish your purpose in life?" What would you say? Would you say, "Gee, I don't know. I never thought about it"? Would you say, "I'm on the road to doing it, but I may not get finished"? What would be your response? My life has been animated by a journey to figure out what my purpose is and then to execute it. If we could put up the slide. The journey line that I have starts in Gary, Indiana. I was born in Gary, Indiana in a house that was across the Calumet River from the United States Steel Mill. In fact, my brother and I would joke that when we were young, we thought snow was black because that was the snow that we saw. As we grew up, we had a great life. Our parents were very devout churchgoers. We would go to church every Sunday. We both grew in our faith of the Lord. And later on, we moved to Arlington Heights, Illinois, a suburb north of Chicago. I was participating in junior high, high school, of course, athletics. But when I was in sixth grade, when I was 11 years old, I decided I wanted to go to West Point. And I first applied for West Point in sixth grade. No, they did not let me in case you were wondering. But fortunately, I had a congressman that didn't discourage a young kid. You know, I loved to play soldiers. I would play Army. I love the things. I was in Boy Scouts, but unlike Will, I did not become Eagle Scout. But I knew I wanted to go to West Point. I knew I wanted to go to West Point. I knew I wanted to live a life differently than others, and I was thinking that there might be people living in unfree societies that I could help free. But I had a problem. I had a barrier. The barrier was a barrier that came up when I was in Boy Scouts. I'm not an Eagle Scout like Will, and I'm very embarrassed to say that. I was a Life Scout, but I could not become Eagle Scout. And the reason I couldn't was I had a deathly fear of swimming. And to become an Eagle Scout in those days, you had to get two merit badges, swimming merit badge and life-saving merit badge. And I couldn't do either one of them. I had almost drowned when I was a youth in Lake Michigan, and that gave me this deathly fear of swimming. My parents every weekend would take me to swimming pools to go through all of the training. I learned all the strokes. I learned all the technical things you had to do to swim, but I was deathly afraid of going in water over my head. So I had a problem. I wanted to go to West Point. That was a huge thing for me, but I didn't know how to swim. And to go to West Point, you have to be able to swim. And then your first year, you go through all kinds of swimming courses and life-saving and other things. So I was very fortunate. My Congressman, Donald Rumsfeld, at the time, did not discourage me from applying. He said, keep applying, and by the time you get to be a junior in high school, hopefully you'll have a good enough score that you get in. Well, that time came, and I got into West Point. I still thank Donald Rumsfeld every day for encouraging this youth to keep after it. I was involved in athletics in high school. I played on an undefeated football team. I was all conference football players. Many people go to West Point. I was active in a service organization called Key Club, where we did service for others. Boy Scouts, of course, was about service for others. So I was getting a sense for what my purpose was, but I thought that really going to West Point was going to galvanize that. So I went to West Point. I started in the first semester. And I studied engineering. I became an engineer. But as I was going through West Point, and as I approached graduation, I was toward the top of my class. And I thought, you know, if I'm going to graduate from West Point, those in the top of the class in those days picked the Corps of Engineers. And I had passed the engineering training test, so it was natural that I would become an engineer. But you don't go to West Point to become an engineer, in my opinion. You go to West Point to become an infantryman. So I was the second person in my class. I graduated 13th. I was the second person in my class to go in the infantry. Well, if you're going to go infantry, you don't just go infantry. You pick the toughest assignment you can find. Well, Vietnam had just ended a few months before, so that was not a choice. So I picked the 82nd Airborne Division. I had gone to airborne school to learn how to parachute. And then the next decision was, well, okay, what other things can I do to fulfill this purpose, to be the best officer I can be in 82nd Airborne Division? So I went to Ranger School. And I have to say, I took a little softer approach there. I gave up 30 days of my leave so I could graduate from Ranger School before Christmas, because I knew if I ever went home and then had to go back, I probably wouldn't go back. Graduated from Ranger School, showed up the 82nd Airborne Division. Fantastic unit, first of the 504, the Devils in baggy pants. Loved my time in the 82nd Airborne Division. And I was fortunate in the sense that we went on a lot of training assignments. We went to Desert Warfare School in Fort Irwin, California. We went to Jungle Warfare School in Panama. We went to Arctic Warfare School in northern Alaska near the Arctic Circle. And as you can imagine, the Army sends you these places during the best times of year. So we went to Northern Warfare School during the wintertime, and it was 60 degrees below zero. Imagine when you open that door to that airplane and you feel the blast of that 110 knot wind, and it's 60 degrees below zero on the ground. Imagine what it is in the air. But wonderful time. During that time, I met my wife. And this is an important part of my focus on purpose. When I met my wife, I obviously found someone who was a soulmate in having a purpose of caring for others. My wife's the most caring person I've ever met. And, you know, in a sense, the Army trains you to prepare for the battlefield where you don't get emotional, where you don't get caring, where in a sense you learn to leave those things behind to prepare yourself for that Army task. But my wife had a great opportunity to train me differently. So how did I meet my wife? Well, I got invited to the wedding of one of my best friends from West Point. His name's Peter Madsen. Peter went away on a vacation to Houston, his home, Christmas of 1976. He came back and said, I've met the girl of my dreams and I asked her to marry me. I said, Peter, you're crazy. How many dates did you go on? He said, well, we went out about 9 times. But don't worry, our parents belong to the same church. They live in the same community. Don't worry. And she's going to give me her answer sometime, as I recall, it was Valentine's Day or Easter. Well, Linda said yes, surprisingly, after only 9 dates. But they ended up, Linda came to plan the wedding, and I remember I came back from a deployment because I had camouflage stick on and all that kind of stuff, and I was in the kitchen. Linda said to me, I have somebody you've got to meet. And Linda then described my future wife, Deanne. I said, Linda, she's a straight A student. She was captain of the cheerleading team, homecoming queen. She's beautiful. She's not going to be interested in me. I'm an infantryman. Well, I went to the wedding, June 30th, 1977. I showed up. And that first day, we stayed in homes in the neighborhood because none of us had any money, and we wore our blues for the event because in those days we didn't have any money for tuxedos or anything. We went to I went over to Linda's house because there was going to be a reception there for the people at the wedding. And the minute I walked in that back door, my wife, my future wife, was in the kitchen helping to prepare for the reception that night. And I said, this must be the girl that Linda was telling me about. It was literally love at first sight. So we got engaged 30 days later. And okay, I don't want you to think I'm not decisive. The only reason I waited 30 days was I thought it was appropriate that I introduce my future wife to my parents. We had to drive to Chicago. And I thought it was only appropriate that I ask her father's permission to marry her. So it took us 30 days to get that done. I apologize. Now, what I told people at the Procter & Gamble company when I used to run it, or when I tell people at the VA, don't ever criticize me for being not decisive, because I'm decisive. So we got married 5 months later, 6 months after we met, on New Year's Eve. And the only reason we got married New Year's Eve and we waited for New Year's Eve was because it was the only time my buddies and I could get off from the 82nd Airborne Division, which was the Army's rapid deployment force at the time. I'm happy to tell you that today Deanne and I are still married. We have 2 lovely children, 3 grandchildren. That's 39 years later. Linda and Peter Madsen are still married 39 years later. And tomorrow it will be my joy to host Linda and Peter at Veterans Day at Arlington National Cemetery. Peter stayed in the military and retired as a brigadier general in the Corps of Engineers. So during that time, I was in the Army. I got an MBA at night and on the weekends from the University of Utah. And knowing my wife, I thought, well, I'm not sure what family life I want for my family. And I'm not sure if my desire of being in airborne ranger kinds of units and constantly being deployed is the kind of family life that might be right for us. So with the MBA, I went on to join the Procter & Gamble company in 1980 in marketing in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is the global headquarters of the company. Throughout my time there, I worked up various positions. And you know why I joined Procter & Gamble? I joined Procter & Gamble at least in part because I wanted to have the childhood for my children that I had, living and working in the same city my whole career. And at that time, that made sense because in 1980, only about 35% of the business of the Procter & Gamble company was outside the United States. I did not predict globalization. I did not predict Deng Xiaoping changing the economy of China. I did not predict the Iron Curtain falling. So even though we didn't plan it, in 1989 we moved to Toronto, Canada, where I ran our laundry and cleaning business in Canada. In 1991 we moved to Manila in the Philippines, where I ran our business in the Philippines, which dated to pre-World War II. 1995, I moved to Kobe, Japan, where I ran our Japanese business and then our Asia business, Northern Asia business. And it was only in 2004 that we moved back to the United States, and I became vice chairman, chief operating officer, and CEO of the company. Throughout that time, it was becoming more and more clear to me of the importance of purpose in my life. And my wife, of course, was reinforcing that. And it really came to me with one of our projects. It's something called Safe Drinking Water. Do you know about 2,000 children die a day from drinking unsafe water in the world? And the average woman in a developing country walks 14 kilometers a day to get water for her family. And then she has to boil it. So this is a huge issue. Water is a huge issue in our world. We developed a chemistry called, well, we originally called it Children's Safe Drinking Water. Today we call it P&G Purifier of Water, where literally you can use this packet and in 20 minutes you can clean 10 liters of water for your family. And there were so many countries I was in as we were expanding the business in places like India, Vietnam, even the Philippines, where you'd be upstream and you'd see a water buffalo defecating in the water. You go downstream to another village and there's a young boy with a bucket taking water from a pipe, and he has no idea where the water came from. And then they'd look at it and it was clear, and because it looked clear, they thought it was safe. They didn't know anything about virus or bacteria. So we started this as perhaps a money-making project, thinking we could make money from this packet. And as many of us who worked on it thought, no, this isn't right. You shouldn't make money from this. Let's just make our cost, but let's help distribute it around the world. So during my time as chief executive officer of the company, we used this with about 100 aid agencies around the world to produce over 2 billion liters of clean water. And I think we're well beyond that now. We're up to about 10 billion liters of clean water. And because of that, we received an award from the Secretary of State called the American Corporate Excellence Award. We were the company to only get it twice. But during this time, it became very clear to me that where I got my kicks was improving the lives of others, and that became my personal purpose. And in the early 2000s, I started giving speeches around the world about, the most important thing in life is purpose. And if you do anything, please know what your individual purpose is. Work to understand it. Look at your life. Look at the threads of continuity throughout your life. Talk to people you love, and come up with a purpose statement for your life. So I retired as the chief executive officer in 2013 from the Procter & Gamble company, and I got a call from the White House. And this call from the White House was, you may have read recently that the Secretary of Veterans Affairs has resigned. The organization is in crisis. They need your help. Well, it was a pretty easy decision to make because I knew what my purpose was. My purpose was to improve the lives of others. When you get a call from the President of the United States or the government of your country, you rise to that purpose. And it's been my joy to be the Secretary of Veterans Affairs for the last 2.5 years. During that time, we have worked hard to improve care for veterans. We've had 4 million more completed medical appointments than in the previous year. We've added over 1,200 doctors, 2,300 more nurses. We've added 4 million more square feet of space in order to get more veterans in. Even though there are 2 million fewer veterans today than in 2009, over 1.2 million veterans are signed up for VA health care versus what it used to be. We took the disability claim backlog based on a lot of work that Secretary Shinseki had done, Allison Hickey had done. We put in place a digital system. We now have that disability claim backlog down by 90%. And the thing I've worked really hard on is reducing veteran homelessness. Veteran homelessness is down virtually half since 2009, but the biggest move has been in the last year where we cut it by 17%. And the reason we cut it by 17% is we focused on Los Angeles, where we cut it by 32%, which is the #1 location for homeless people. So my life has been about a purpose. I hope that all of you will be able to get something from my talk. Purpose is the most important thing in life. Don't waste your life. Figure out what your purpose is and then follow it with vigor and with a great effort. And that will lead to a more fulfilling life than simply meandering through life without direction. My name is Bob McDonald, and I'm a proud Army veteran. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I think that may be the first time ever a cabinet-level secretary has ever got on stage and told his personal story with such genuine emotion and honesty, and we want to thank you for that. So
Thank
if
you,
everybody could give me another round of applause, please. We also at Got Your Six want to recognize you for something else, and that has been your contribution not only to the Department of Veterans Affairs, but to the entire veteran empowerment movement. And Got Your Six, as you know, Bob, and as everyone who's here knows, we do believe in collaboration. And we have a coalition of nonprofit partners, a coalition of entertainment partners, and a coalition of government partners. And for the first time ever, we are presenting the Got Your Six Veteran Empowerment Award to Bob McDonald, and this is why. The first time I met you, and many of the people in the room met you, we were in a conference room in the Department of Veterans Affairs, and Bob drew the pyramid that everyone learned about in school at business class, or something you may have read on the internet, and it says, hey, the CEO's up here, right? And then the customers are down here. And he ripped off the page and he drew another triangle that was inverted, and he put the veteran at the top, and he put himself at the bottom. And it was his focus on the individual first, which really inspired the entire room. And since then, Bob has received countless emails, countless phone calls, not just from me, but from everybody in this room saying someone needs help, someone needs a hand. And you have responded, and frankly, through your leadership, you've not only improved the Department of Veterans Affairs, but you have brought the entire military, veteran, and family community forward. And for that, we want to say thank you for your service, Bob, and thank you for your life of purpose.
Thank you, Bill.
Very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Can I say for you?
Yes.
Tomorrow's Veterans Day, and I'd like to wish you all a premature Happy Veterans Day. I'm going to be in Arlington National Cemetery tomorrow. I know many of you will be as well. When I go there, I always think about the opening sequence of the movie Saving Private Ryan, where Private Ryan comes back to the cemetery in Normandy Beach, and in Omaha Beach rather, and says to Captain Miller, who gave his life in combat for Private Ryan, I've tried to live my life consistent with what you did for me. I've tried to do everything I can to thank you in the way I've lived my life. Tell me that I've earned it. And I know all of us who are veterans, one of the reasons that we're better contributors to our community, one of the reasons we vote more often, one of the reasons we're more engaged, which I'm thrilled with the work that Got Your Six is doing, is because all of us feel we're inadequate. I'm certainly inadequate to Will, who gave much more than I did. I'm inadequate to Bill, because Bill served in combat. But we're all inadequate to that person who never came back. And that's what Veterans Day is about, and every day is about, is remembering all the people who have served and what they have done so all of us can enjoy the freedoms that we have today. Thank you, Bill.